somewhat, expected. I don't necessarily see it having a huge impact on kind of where we were trending, which is probably why it happened. But I don't think it's too far out of what we expected and how things played out. Obviously, whether it's him or other guys, we obviously want nothing but the best for them in their futures. It's a very different college football that we all grew up with, but it's part of the process.
When Ken thanked you and Penn State before entering the portal, Talley, was that his decision to leave, or did you guys, was it a team decision?
Yeah, we don't get into the specifics with any of these things. I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to talk about, any of these guys and the specifics on why they're leaving. That's their personal business, and we want them to be able to leave and go on and be successful. It didn't work out for a variety of reasons.
James, you mentioned a changing dynamic in college football the past few years, the transfer portal being one of those things. How do you keep players happy in a transfer portal world?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know if you're in a sport like football where you have 85 scholarships and essentially you're going to have about 25 guys, 11 on offense, 11 on defense, and then some special teams guys, specialists specifically. You're always going to have a portion of the team that wants more, and you get that. That's part of the recruiting process. But I also think, we just try to be transparent and treat people the way we want to be treated. We also don't overpromise on the front end. Some of these schools, they promise that they're going to play as true freshmen and those types of things. We try to be realistic. I think we lose some recruits because of that, because we don't tell them what they want to hear. But we just try to be transparent and authentic. And I wish that was embraced. The reality is everybody says, "Oh, yeah, I want the truth," and then you give the truth, and not everybody always likes that. So you're not going to. To be honest, it's never been like that. I think about back in the old days. I mean, literally, now you have a pretty good understanding of obviously who they've signed. Old days, you'd show up on campus and there'd be 7 quarterbacks. So it's changed, and I think for the better for the most part. But that's part of our job, is managing personalities and families and all those things.
James, back at Media Day, we got early returns on Chop having an impact. What's that impact look like now in the 3rd week of preseason camp? Yeah,
athletic, strong, fast. He's got some Big Ten experience already, so that's been helpful. So obviously a position in need. So whether it's from a depth perspective or whether it's from a starting perspective, I do know that we feel really good about Adisa and where he's at. I think we do feel really good about Tar Burton and where he's at. Very different styles and probably very different, kind of talents and styles of play. But we're pleased with that group, and Chop adds to that.
James, at what point do you transition from camp to game week prep, and how is that impacted by the unique starting date? Do you give yourself some bonus days to prepare?
Similar to how I've told you guys in the past. I don't really have the date. I can tell you what we're doing in about an hour. Yeah. And for us, this time of year, the days of the week really don't matter. It's just we're kind of going. It's funny because we got this kind of rotation where we're going 3 days on and then kind of an off day. It's not a true off day, but an off day from practice. And I kind of stopped at Starbucks with my daughter and Frank Leonard on the way in, which is my normal routine, and it felt like a Sunday, but I think it was Wednesday or something at the time. But for us, we'll do it like we've always done in the past. We typically just count back from the game, and whether that game is on a Saturday or whether that game is on a Thursday, we'll just count back from that and do a normal game week. And then obviously with camp, we're able to steal a few days. So we'll do not a full week of a bonus week, but we'll do a Tuesday. We'll do a player's day off to allow us to finish up the game plan. And then we'll do like a bonus Tuesday practice, a bonus Wednesday practice. I think we do have a bonus Thursday practice and then kind of get into normal game week type of deal. I think is how it's played out.
Is it
James,
harder to
what's your
scout?
Starbucks order based off of that? And then is there an update on the offense since media day, that any progressions that you've made that you really like?
So first of all, I'm not going to get into the Starbucks order because it's embarrassing, to be honest with you. I just started drinking coffee a few years ago, and my coffee is essentially an ice cream sundae. So I'm not going to sit here and say it because it's not a good look. In terms of the offense, from a change perspective, I don't know if there's a whole lot of depth chart changes. For you guys, there's been a buzz, obviously, about the two freshman backs. I think that the two quarterbacks have really done a nice job. We're probably further ahead from that standpoint. I think, last year, obviously, this time we had a veteran quarterback and then a bunch of question marks behind him, and now we have a veteran quarterback with a quarterback who's played in Big Ten games and won a Big Ten game, and two guys that people are excited about. So just there's more depth at the quarterback position, but really probably across the board. And then obviously Hunter Norzad, I think, coming in has provided competition and depth for us as well, which was needed. So not a whole lot different than probably what you guys are aware of at this point. But the practices have been really good. I think year 2 with Mike, I think it's been helpful for everybody. And then I also think the change up on defense a little bit has been good because it's been challenging for Sean. Sean's football IQ is really high, and after being with Brent Pry in that defense, he had a pretty good idea of pressures and disguises, and now it's different. So I think it's been really good from that standpoint to be able to sit in those meeting rooms and kind of work through tips and tendencies so that we can get our protection set correct and anticipate and read coverage. So I think that's been good.
Is it harder to scout week 1 with the transfer portal with so many players changing, and strengths of defenses can change over an offseason? Or do you have enough film of those players to kind of get an idea of what they're going to be able to do in a system or a scheme?
No, I think the first game of the year is always challenging from that standpoint. I think, whether it's a transfer portal team now or a team back in the day that would hit the junior college, circuit hard. I remember listening to people, when I was in SEC, maybe about a Mississippi State, that, they'd be very different, come the fall from even the spring game. So that's always been challenging for different reasons, but it's not like you can go back and watch a guy's film at the previous school and project how the new team is going to use him. And maybe you look at Chop, for example, he was a 3-4 outside linebacker to now a 4-3 defensive end. So I think that's somewhat hard, unless you do what I just did and say he went from a 3-4 outside linebacker to a 4-3 DN. But that's the thing I think is challenging for first games. That's why, forever in college football, the college football that we all grew up with, it was a very different out-of-conference kind of schedule mentality, and that has changed. I actually think what the Big Ten and other conferences are doing, spreading out the Big Ten games throughout the entire season, I think it makes more sense obviously from a TV perspective, but I also think it makes more sense from a fan's perspective. I think that's why there's always kind of been the promoting and the response to what people describe as like a sexy out of conference game, and I get that, but this helps with that. Where there's still those types of games that people get excited about. But there's value. There's a preseason in the NFL for a reason, right? It gives you an opportunity to work some of the kinks out, get an idea of kind of who you are and what you are and what your identity is. So, you can make arguments both ways.
We hear coaches every year that say, this was one of my favorite teams, the chemistry was great in this room, which means that at some point that coach probably said, this really sucked, I was not having fun this year. That there's a scope between the quality of like the vibe in the locker room and the chemistry and how it feels. How quickly do you figure out if you're going to quote unquote like your team, and what are the characteristics of the teams that you quote unquote like?
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is you know, just like the O-line, I'm being measured about what I say about everything.
I want you to pick your favorite kid, sort
Yeah,
of thing.
but what I will say is this: I think, you know, in some ways, you guys get sick of the coach getting up there every year and saying, "This is my favorite team." But you do, you know, just like the fans are. You're hopeful in the beginning of the season of what can be. I have not been in an experience too often in my career as a head coach where I really struggled, you know, with the team. You hope that you don't go through that. You have enough, you know, relationships and experiences that you get to a good place. You know, but, you know, I do think we're in a good place right now. Today was a good example of that. You know, we had this schedule. I apologize. I know you guys like to come out to practice. I hope you were able at least to go in there in the pitch black and get some pictures or some visuals. But literally, like, nobody in our building knew. As you guys know, every year we try to keep this thing secret. The vets got a pretty good formula of figuring out kind of what's going on. This helped because usually they'll call the bowling alley and say, "You got any big parties today?" You know, at this time, and they have a pretty good idea of, you know, Devon Elise was the guy today. He's like, "I saw the buses parked out back." I said, "There's no buses parked out back." But you know, doing things like this is important. We've had some years, you know, obviously like a lot of people did, where, you know, whether it was COVID or whatever, that made it challenging to do some of these types of events, depending on what state you're in. You know, so I think we're in a good place. We've had really physical practices, which I think has been important. You know, in years past, I was concerned about depth at a few spots where you'd have to kind of pull that back, and it's hard to have a tough physical team mentally and physically if you're not having those type of practices. So I think we're in a good place, but at the end of the day, you know, you guys will tell me and everybody else very clearly how we are after the Purdue game.
How's
more
your
guys.
middle
You seen-
linebacker competition coming along?
That was an aggressive jump and that pause. I wasn't done. Go ahead.
Have you seen what you wanted to so far out of Kevon for a third-year returning starting running back who's being pushed by two talented freshmen?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I think Kevon's probably better than what he gets credit for. I think he's got a chance to have a really good year for us. I also think, you know, we have four backs that we have a lot of confidence in, that different styles and different abilities. But I also say I still think there's a lot left in the tank for Kevon. I think he's taken a big step, and I think I'll have a chance to show that this year. But I still think there's a lot of room, you know, for growth and development. And, you know, for college players, you can say that for a lot of them, but I would say for him, I think there's still a lot more for him to tap into that I don't even know if he's aware of yet.
How's your
do you have
middle
a question?
linebacker competition shaping up?
Good. Yeah, I think as you guys know, Elsden and Kobe, that was going to be a heated competition. I'd say right now as Elsden is a little bit ahead of Kobe. Kobe's still kind of figuring all out. You got to remember, you know, he's still a redshirt freshman, and that guy's basically the quarterback of the defense. So, you know, he's going to play in game one. There's still time, you know, between now and the first game to, you know, before we actually name starters. But, you know, he's still got time, but he's going to play a lot no matter what. You know, and we'll see where he's at, and the rest of the guys are as well, you know, as the season goes on. The other guy, you know, I want to give some credit to and some love to is Dwyer. Dwyer's done a great job. We're, you know, in some ways he reminds me of kind of the Jan Johnson story. You know, Jan went from a, you know, scout team tight end to the start middle linebacker in Michigan. So, you know, I'm pretty proud of him as well. There's a number of guys, but he's the guy I've been making a big deal out of with the team. I think he's going to have a huge special teams role for us this year. I'm really proud of him. I'm really proud of him, and I think you guys will see he's going to have a good year for us.
All right, thank you, Coach.
Thanks, guys.